I've been a fan of Pokemon since before I could read, and the fancy child specialist told my parents I had a little thing called hyperliteracy. So that's saying something, folks. It would not be a stretch to claim that Pokemon was my first true conscious interest. I woke up early on the weekends to catch episodes of the anime, trace pictures and books, and directly off the television screen, told elaborate magical tales using my figure collection, and regularly begged to visit my older cousin's house to participate in multiplayer battles, read his Primus/Brady games guides, and take advantage of his super sick action replay cheating device. I have loved Pokemon almost my whole life. Sure, there was about a 5-year window around college where I mostly swore off gaming and missed out on Sun, Moon, and their Ultra varieties. Luckily, however, due to a novel once-in-a-generational outbreak of pathogenic nightmare invaders, I got cooped up in my father's newly blended home where my stepbrother had copies of both Sword and Shield. Pokemon Sword brought me back to the flock and made me born again in Arceus' sweet eternal light. This intro serves to establish with you, my dear viewer, all three major rhetorical appeals: pathos or emotion, shown through discussing my precious childhood; ethos or credibility by explaining my long-standing history with the franchise; and logos or logic through these math problems I'm now flashing on the screen. Wow, what a logical guy. Now that we have established myself as a perfect 3-tiered rhetorical expert in the field, I can drop my bombshell on your bikini's bottom. I am sick of turn-based rock, paper, scissors battle mechanics, gym leaders, Elite Four, quirky rivals, evil teams with head-ass motivations. I've seen it all before, again and again, with quality of life upgrades, downgrades, side grades. I know good and well what lurks beneath each release's variable bunk presentations and technical tomfoolery displays. Once you've been on this wild ride long enough, you no longer need imagination, just the ability to regurgitate. So that's why today, on Mr. Nonsense's train ride to nowhere, I dig through the most interesting, atypical, weird little Pokemon fan games. Games that have the audacious confidence to buck trends and establish themselves as wholly unique entities that utilize the Pokemon fiction and establish decades-long world building to present interesting mechanics and ideas based in the Pokemon universe. I fully believe that with enough gumption and creativity, Pokemon games can exist in any genre due in large part thanks to their colorful cast of critter characters and utopic backstories. All it would take is some true firebrands and world beaters at the helm to revolutionize the way consumers view the franchise. Now, don't get me wrong, the base games slap harder than whatever's going on over on your Rumble-addicted stepdad's TikTok page, but sometimes it's important to take stock of what you have and recontextualize the proceedings. Now, allow me the pleasure of showing you 10 unique, weird little interesting Pokemon fan games that buck trends and slay girls slay. This video exists because Karpe Diem exists. More than that, this video exists because Karpe Diem is singularly excellent in its short-form oddball slice-of-life perfection. True sickos already know I covered this game in my previous video cataloging 50 weird and interesting free-to-play no-download required browser games. In that video, I waxed poetic and gushed boldly about how the world of Karpe Diem does more for Pokemon than Pokemon has done for itself in decades. This is mild hyperbole, but from every ounce of spouted exaggeration lies a tremendous nugget of pristine, opulent truth. Karpe Diem is what inspired me to thoroughly seek out all the eccentric odds and ends creative fans have crafted throughout the internet fangame age. If Karpe Diem's developers were able to convince me of the warmth and splendor tucked away at the edges of the Pokemon periphery and to make me earnestly wonder what other unique experiences can be fostered by settling in our seats directly in the middle of the theater and moving just a tad away from the proverbial retina, impairing trite repetitive expected gameplay Ultra IMAX screen, then it bears to some sense of reason that others share in the mega-evolved Ubermensch style obligation to set right what Nintendo, for lack of a better turn of phrase, set wrong. But that's a whole lot of run-on sentence, right-on-brand nonsense to inject into your super-fit, non-clogged veins without appropriate context. If you're new here, I do that as a gag and to brag in equal measure. Karpe Diem is a cozy short-form narrative that follows our old man protagonist through the local holiday/festival Karpe Diem, a time-sensitive competition of sorts which tasks local residents with fishing Pokemon out of local bodies of water. In my estimation, the actual gameplay on display is almost entirely circumstantial. The real magic present is in the presentation, pacing, and tone. Karpe Diem does an excellent job of displaying a wholesome Pokemon world mostly removed from any corporate artifice. The world we joyfully navigate for roughly half an hour is lovingly textures and offers us a view from the outside, as if we were playing as the non-playable fisherman character, a man who does not collect, capture, or battle, and instead luxuriates in mellow vibes. On our journey, we see those motivated by the competitive battle-oriented spirit of Mount Silver's very own trainer extraordinaire Red. We see youngsters catching and battling alongside those who are just making their way through their days. And on this day, the day of Karpe Diem, well, that's our character's day, our character's time to shine and show their specially lifetime curated skill set. While fishing is not standard fair turn-based rock, paper, scissors strategic combat, fishing still is uniquely Pokemon. By leveraging the act of fishing, a common occurrence in the mainline games, the developers properly align our Venn diagram to optimal overlapping conditions. In many ways, I feel that Karpe Diem in its brevity presents an experience that feels more like Pokemon than most mainline content. It's that good and that special. When I was in middle school, one of my go-to computer lab games was Newgrounds.com's Pokemon Tower Defense. This, of course, was until my school's network outright blocked the Newgrounds domain and forced our collection of Flash game-addicted inveterate souls to congregate on Congregate. Just kidding, that was blocked too, of course. We actually immigrated to the non-blocked CoolMathGames.com. Regardless, I cannot deny my outpouring sincere love for Pokemon Tower Defense, so whenever Flash officially was placed behind my uncle's barn and brain blasted to a separate and better subliminal plane of existence, the original Flash version of PTD went MIA, or maybe more relevantly KIA. Thankfully, the remnants of Flash's disciples, now scattered to the wind like a schlock samurai movie, descended onto a new domain with the same baller gameplay. But before I go further, I want to casually mention that despite my undoubtedly perfect and genuine love for the original Flash Pokemon Tower Defense, there is another Tower Defense style Pokemon game that has done the rounds and made an impression: Pokepath TD. Pokepath solves some of my minor gripes with the Newgrounds Pokemon Tower Defense, but introduces its own bed-ridden, pus-filled foibles. If PPTD and PTD's best elements were merged, we would have a generational banger on our hands, but in a world where ifs and buts are candied old nuts, then I guess it isn't Christmas. Back to the object of my ancient crusty desires, nay Newgrounds' very own Pokemon Tower Defense. In Pokemon Tower Defense, players build unique teams of 6 Pokemon to serve as their titular Pokemon, and even more titular ritualistic bouts of tower defending. Similar to the base games, Pokemon level up, evolve, and learn moves. The onus is then wholly placed on the player to micro-optimize team compositions, tower placements, and assign appropriate moves for support, disruption, or damage. While completing levels, players can capture wild Pokemon to introduce to their teams. PTD does a wonderful job at encouraging players to mix and match Pokemon and moves while employing a slew of related but disparate strategies. In many respects, the game's gentle experimentation nudge succeeds where other games may fail. Training Pokemon is relatively brisk, and changing move-related strategies is simple. Challenge-related hurdles are amply placed, but with enough strategizing or grinding, no barrier is more than a few minutes away from completion. If you enjoy tactics tower defense games, Pokemon Tower Defense provides a subtly robust take on the genre. Even if these critters were stripped of the high-profile intellectual property maximum babyified artifice skin, the underpinned mechanics and proverbial design structure like bones of this game would remain strong.
There should be a Pokemon game where you run people over with a bike. Called Pokemon Bike Rampage. Gonna make that? Let's go! They're like, wait, you can't use it indoors, and you're like, try to stop me. And you can get new gear and upgrade your bike. That'd be horrible. Because it would make me not want to play any other Pokemon game. It would just be too good. It's too high quality, you know?
Bike Rampage is an absurd idea built upon one of Pokemon's core cardinal silly sins, one that most players have encountered dozens if not hundreds of times. There's a time and a place for everything, but not now. A simple sentence stated as immutable fact echoing over the distance of eternity and supernaturally pattering the ear's drums. But what if our protagonist was a free thinker, a rebel, and had a deeply iconoclastic desire to demand the world bend to his own corrupted notions of indoor biking once? Bike Rampage is the perfect atypical weird fan game. It completely swerves out of its peers' cruising lane directly into oncoming traffic of prime absurdity. This game is built on a foundational, widespread shared memory that is uniquely Pokemon. No hook more hooky, no thesis more theseist. That's a stretch. And I have never been more amped to ramp. Age. Rampage, get it? In Bike Rampage, players rage on their bike. Literally, what you read in this case is exactly what you get. Our protagonist, fed up with the old oaken ways, steals his soul and commits to a brazen and bizarre path fraught with violence and hyper-gamified cartoon villain tomfoolery. Throughout roughly 20 levels, players compete in timed trials where the dastardly goal is to trample all terrestrial tenants. Scattered throughout the roughly 90-minute runtime are a sampling of simple bosses that break from the standard level fare and serve as interesting side ideas that connect plug-in socket-like to the Kanto core present throughout the game's visual and referential DNA. Overall, I enjoyed the frenetic pedal-pumping pace and practice-perfect precise execution. They can't all be winners. There are a handful of levels which exceed the regular difficulty and require multiple trial-and-error time trialing attempts. I honestly wish there were more of these style challenges where time is tight and proper execution is a must for success. In between levels, players are treated to not-so-subtle humor-forward narrations. In a previous upload, I railed pretty heartily against the humor stylings of Restless Soul, stating something to the effect of the game's writing insisted upon itself. Actually, hell, we can just listen, here's the snippet. Games are occasionally funny, but humor's subjective nature in video games' unique player inputs makes landing jokes more challenging than any other parallel traditional media. Restless Soul insists upon itself with such alacrity and repetition and single-minded focus. Restless Soul's approach to humor, writing, and story progression is so baffling and omnipresent that it is the game's greatest strength and its most damning area of criticism. In no way, shape, or form does Restless Soul ever release its dead-legged foot from the busted-ass Pontiac Aztec's proverbial go pedal. I had some people reach out to me and explain that they really enjoyed this humor and found that it added a tremendous amount to the overall experience. I learned that casting blanket holier-than-thou assertions about things as subjective as humor is often a fool's errand handed to the court's silliest jester with the most syphilitic brain. What I'm trying to say more succinctly is that Bike Rampage is a game that thinks itself quite funny, and it is up to you to determine the validity of its point-blank post-ironic sensibilities. Personally, it is a little much for me at times, but there are some fun narrative notes and sharply conceived jokes scattered throughout. But I think you as a consumer and fan know exactly how much stake you want to place in a game that makes aggressive use of the SpongeBob Ow My Leg Guy and the Tommy Tallarico Nightmare Saga Messiah Nay Roblox Oof sound effect. If that speaks to your uniquely twisted and conniving soul, then you, my good friend, are about to be in so much business they will call you to testify in front of the Securities and Exchange Commission, cause I know you're embezzling. Pokemon Crystal League offers a unique take on deck-building strategy turn-based tactics games that only moderately jocks Inscription Steez, though that full frontal Steez jockeying at most serves as inspiration and not downright bootleggery. Gameplay consists of building 2 decks of cards. In your first is a group of Pokemon with unique stats, abilities, and costs. In the second deck, players select an assortment of berries. Berries are effectively mana which enable you to play your cards. More powerful cards require more berries on the board prior to deployment. Each turn, players are granted 2 draw points to use on either berries or Pokemon. After drawing and stationing cards on board, players can begin the attack phase. During this phase, allied Pokemon either deal damage to the opposition's active Pokemon or attack the opposition directly. Pokemon types and synergies are critical to maximize on enemy weaknesses and progress. This is where the game is at its most Inscription, with the goal of the game being to tilt this scoreboard on the right completely in your favor. The macro level goal is to complete 8 difficult gym leader bosses while building a robust and varied deck to handle unique typing-based problems. Prior to attempting the gym leader, roguelike style mapping decisions are presented. Through these decisions, players can obtain additional Pokemon, berries, level ups, evolutions, or participate in battles to earn funds to participate in all of the above mentioned activities. If players arrive at the gym leader and get their ass blasted in a negative way, not a fun way, gang, then you can return to the last cutoff floor immediately following the last gym leader and begin the gym ascent once more, paying specific attention to ironing out deck construction deficiencies. Where Pokemon Crystal League really excels is in its supremely tactile, revelatory, addictive combat mechanics and user interface. Everything on the battle screen feels excellent to press with sterling virtual kinesthetic and audio feedback designs. The same is true for the pre-gym leader power-up floors. Flipping over cards, level up, and evolutions all share the same keen eye and ear for what makes games feel good to play. It feels so good and so damn pejorative sticky that in the moment it's hard to grapple with just how tedious and grindy it all becomes. Crystal League is best enjoyed in chunks. Don't be like me and mainline this digital substance directly into your blown ankle veins, even if the buttons print dopamine like Penguin Random House prints your mom's favorite novels. Regardless, Dock, as a standalone fan game, Pokemon Crystal League presents with intelligent design sensibilities that evolve on an already excellent established gameplay concept and cast of recognizable international mega-celebrity critters. Pokemon Close Combat is the distillation of decades worth of lessons learned from the best to ever do it. I'm not an expert in traditional 2D fighting games. At best, I tune into EVO Top 8 VODs, or catch a fragmented glimpse into the scene through the occasional short-form video essay. In all honesty, and I'm telling on myself here, I prefer platform fighting games and have dumped north of 2,000 lifetime hours into every Smash Bros. Release, and have a small Rivals of Aether 2 tournament spectator addiction. That's a lot of words to circuitously land my infant ass directly in the Firehouse's retractable orphan bin of this segment's pseudo-hook-derived metaphor slog. All caps for denoting trivial levels of magnitude and its importance. Dun 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 dun. Pokemon Close Combat is more fun than practicing wave dashes and likely more fun than catching waves on your great Uncle Ivan's freshly waxed board, dude. Gameplay aside, Pokemon Close Combat excels at being a love letter to its fighting game inspirations and its Pokemon theming. Fighting game character archetypes are seemingly effortlessly weaved into the Pokemon's physiology, dex entries, typing, and movesets. Alongside these more left-brained analytical lore structure considerations, a Wiener Schnitzel's chili repository's worth of personality and downright fucking swagger is lovingly drizzled all over this dog's big sultry bun. Pokemon, who I haven't even thought twice about, all of a sudden burst forth from a quiet relative obscurity onto the big lights craft meal provided soundstage to demand their place amongst the pantheon of star-studded top-tier killer designs. The art direction paired with a particular attention to personality and diverse characterizations make each Pokemon feel just as interesting, if not more so, than any Tekken or Street Fighter newcomer. Thanks in large part due to this design excellence, I was able to weather the neophyte storm and arrive at Big Gamer's port, treading water all the way, morphing from a big idiot baby massive loser to someone who marginally understood what was happening and was capable of clearing the game's main story mode fighting gauntlet, the Path, with multiple characters. For those who are interested in an idiot's tier list, Blaziken, Slitherwing, and Koomomo, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say that out loud. Koomomo. This dragon guy. He's fun. Koomomo. Are stupid busted, and Hawlucha and Chestnut are straight buns, hun. Luckily for you, and quite frankly me as well, my NFL CTE, that's new fighting lifestyle, credible tele-evaluation, adjacent big dumb opinions on character viability, have nothing to do with the overflowing fun factor present. Pokemon Close Combat is clichély greater than the sum of its parts. The fighting game mechanics are dense and simple, and the presentation is punchy and grand. Overall, the level of dynamism displayed is frankly absurd for a free fan game. As I mentioned earlier, everything here feels effortless, which paradoxically means that everything present from gameplay to audio to visuals took a Herculean and dedicated focus to implement and perfect. If you love fighting games, you may find even more underneath my surface level appreciation to vibe with. Or if you are similar to me and new to the space, I think the Pokemon flavoring makes for a rock-solid and boisterous introduction to the genre. Alcremie is one of my girlfriend's favorite Pokemon, so I felt it spiritually resonant and functionally pertinent to get her input on Alcremie Studio, a game where you can skirt the line between dress-up and cake decoration. In her words, quote, "Who doesn't love a chance to turn Alcremie into a perfect dessert? I wish that you could customize even more Pokemon. It's like customizing Mycene characters. Real ones will get that," end quote. If you, like me, were not in the know and not a quote-unquote real one, according to my girlfriend, Mycene are spin-off Barbie dolls released by Mattel throughout the 2000s, and for many, Mycene.com was a cultural pillar of girlhood. On Mycene.com, people could customize and glamorize digital Mycene characters, much in the same way we can dress up Alcremie in her studio. Despite its rudimentary customization options, Alcremie Studio is an interesting little crossover moment. Pokemon dress-up is nothing new. In many games, which include contest modes, players have the ability to fully deck out their sweet darlings with ludicrous swag. For a few minutes of your time, I think what's present is darn good, and the Pokemon Rumble-style Alcremie model is on point. However, what I find even more interesting than Alcremie Studio is developer Smearg's other itch.io release, Apartment Tour SB, a quiet top-down walking simulator that borrows heavy inspirations from Pokemon and Mother 3. While Apartment Tour SB isn't technically a Pokemon fan game, it does hold in its heart and mind a monster dollop of Perugia level visual purloinment. That's the guy who stole the Mona Lisa. That's a deep cut. I googled that. I didn't know that off the top of my head. In this empty world, most doors are locked and the city is barricaded for fear of the forest witch's wrath. Meander about and talk to a collection of inanimate objects and receive an ephemeral view into another person's creative, hectic, physical, digitized space and ideas. Apartment Tour SB is everything I love about games, big or small, a delicate, deliberate, and punchy jaunt into another's creativity mind palace. As a weird little games aficionado, I circle the track dozens of times a year and listen to the chatter on the pit wall about how games need high-concept hooks and systems, but I will always contend that something sincere and simple is just as worthy. In many instances, nothing is enough. I intended for the Slowpoke Shack to serve as this video's keystone segment, a massive game that bucked trends and would seamlessly deliver us to something resembling a conclusion. Dear viewers, if you take a gander at the remaining runtime and upcoming chapter markers, you will astutely conclude something went sideways somewhere. In all honesty, there was a disconnect present between what I thought the Slowpoke Shack was like in reality, and I want to make sure we are all on the same page and I'm not being misquoted or misinterpreted at any conceivable level when I make the following statements. Just because what I expected and what I received were incongruent does not mean that the Slowpoke Shack misses the mark. I could venture the opposite as substantiated fact, because if we look at the Slowpoke Shack for what it is, it's quite the impressive, well-produced feat. The situation is simple. I believe the Slowpoke Shack would offer a more Harvest Moon-like Dave the Diver-esque farming and restaurant simulator with a strong narrative throughline and a huge dose of Pokemon charm. In essence, I expected a low-key, cozy farming game sans traditional battles. In my head heart, I created my own game where players capture Pokemon to tend their farm, like Tauros to pull plows, Miltanks and Farfetch'd in the barns and coops, Magikarp in the streams, tending to a farm of berries and using specialty farming equipment to produce Pokeblocks and Poffins, maintaining apiaries filled with Combee, extracting silk from Ariados, crafting Pokemon-themed outfits and dyeing them, and using what's left to run a quaint and beautiful small business which shapes a narrative about a lost soul finding purpose in a scaled-down, manageable, interpersonally dense, off-the-beaten-path town. If you make games and want a partner, I have more ideas for this fictional game that was going to serve as my closer, so hit me up, hunks, I'm ready to go fucking viral. Long story short, none of that has jack doodly diddly ho to do with the Slowpoke Shack, so let's take a look at what this game actually is and why it's cool on its own merits, not based on my clown-ass assumptions. The Slowpoke Shack is a narratively driven Pokemon fan game about moving to a new place and running a restaurant. But instead of focusing on the maintenance and management of a retrofitted small plot of land farm and partaking in cozy cute slice of life Pokemon-focused moments, the Slowpoke Shack favors sticking to traditional battle mechanics as a method to introduce challenge and gate progression. As you know, based on my prolix introduction and game selection thus far, the mere hint of main series turn-based combat mechanics is enough to turn this sunny Sally into a lugubrious Larry. Despite the Slowpoke Shack shattering my perfectly consistent internal rules, I still played for just shy of 2 hours, hoping that the game would introduce additional atypical mechanics to support the overarching gameplay and narrative to reduce the overall occurrences of actual rule-breaking combat. This may occur at some point, but I eventually waved my white flag, tapped the canvas, threw my towel, and pulled the big X-shaped plug. A man can only get stunted on by an agility-spamming Lycanroc so many times before he must accept fate and begin level grinding, and that will never happen in my home. Based on what I completed, the overall atypical cooking mechanics were well conceived and the highlight of my experience. Additionally, the story introduced interesting narrative hooks early to encourage inquisitive players to soldier through the agility-spamming Lycanroc to see what lurks beyond the next combat set piece. In an odd turn of events, one of Slowpoke Shack's crowning achievements is its user interface, which utilizes a modern circular menu approach which looks and feels excellent to use. I'm not the most hip to this space, so this could be bog standard, but considering how excellent the overall graphical composition is, I doubt this isn't bespoke. I kind of feel like the world's biggest idiot hater for wanting a different game when this game, quite frankly, is excellent on its own merits. I just don't want to participate in these battles, especially for this type of video. I just want to cook little dishes and hang out with Pokemon friends. Eevee's Spooky Diner is not exactly what I wanted, but it's close enough, and god damn it, this is my video, so I can play Eevee's gosh dang darn Spooky Diner if I so please. Here's the pitch. Make little dishes for Pokemon. Play as Eevee. Have a great time with lots of love and spiritual little smooches. If that sounds up your alley, then download away. If you're looking for something more robust, Slowpoke Shack has you covered. Pokemon Snowlight Festival exudes raw sincerity, from its characters to its tone and its eclectic writing style, which sways between mindful and aphoristic to clinical and off-kilter. The components on display left a lasting impression which has bounced around my noggin space like a mid-2000s DVD screensaver, only occasionally perfectly hitting the corner and sending a jolt of kind inspiration through my cynically slanted worldview. Snowlight Festival at its core is a story about the holidays, how the past creeps into pernicious view, and how understanding conversations, mindful care, and supportive community serve as salves for the wounds of past trauma. As someone who harbors delicate resentments for holidays past and a cautious optimism for holidays future, the game's themes presented more than the Santa Ana's wad of Chicle to chew on. Ultimately, the saccharine finale and hyper-focused therapy lens language shouldn't make me fully bounce off this game Mucha Lucha Ricochet style, but instead I found myself engrossed in the whisper of the fiction's traditions. This largely has to do with the writing style, which straddles the line between genuine to a fault and just outright faulty. But as you might know, genius is located in those narrow margins, and by force or fire, by feather soft touch or robust cannonball blast, the prose is the best worst best feature. There's a hint of Hemingway in the terse characterizations, which in some instances create a sharp and flowing dialogue-oriented story, but occasionally obfuscates simple principles in favor of a paradoxically flowery pretension. Gameplay is non-existent, which is high praise coming from me. Ultimately, Snowlight Festival ascribes to a traditional visual novel's tendencies to its betterment. The lack of traditional hyper-focused systems-oriented gameplay allows players to settle into the atmosphere and live out the moment vicariously through its Pokemon cast of characters. Initially, the Pokemon characters felt discordant with the tone, as if a cherub was weeping for the loss of its love, but within a few short moments, Stoutland dropping knowledge feels not only natural but necessary. If you have any interest in unique games with literary aspirations, Snowlight Festival more than swings above its weight class in presentation, style, and mood. Daily games are nothing new. One may myopically pinpoint the rise of Wordle, Connections, and other New York Times S-tier web traffic relevance generators as the peak of this gaming business interaction model. However, open your third eye, my dear, and peer deeper into the recesses of our shared human histories to find a richer and more beautiful physical puzzle landscape filled to the brim with succulent, sweet crossword justice. If physical crosswords are for your favorite great aunt and Wordle is for your cringe millennial 9-to-5er cousin, then Pokedoku is for you and me, darling. I don't know why I wrote it like that. I'm stuck in a 9-to-5. Who else? I know what my demographics look like. You probably are too. A daily game for sickness-afflicted freaks who are trying to stunt on each other by pulling the most obscure Pokemon from the deepest recesses of our corroded-ass mental corridors. Place your gaze firmly on the 3x3 grid, the simplicity a monumental misnomer for the shocking depth disparity present. Your goal, Angels, is to identify Pokemon that match the two parameters present on the X and Y axis. Pokedoku offers daily puzzles, an archive of old puzzles, and an unlimited mode which auto-generates grids from the standard parameters. In essence, Pokedoku does not require a person to have any level of mechanical mastery built on the foundations of playing the base games, but instead phrases its unique gameplay problems as trivia questions that let sickos flex their enormous encyclopedic knowledge of all aspects of Pokemon's inherent characteristics, from type, region, evolution, and other obscure strata. If you have something to prove to someone, especially if that someone is yourself, then lock in and take your talents to the top of the daily leaderboards. See you there, champ. I know that the overarching narrative throughline for this video is that I adore it when freaks get weird with it. It in that sentence refers to literally everything. I mean literal in a literal sense as well. I want little twisted weirdos to chug a cubic ton's worth of Franzia right in my face and brag about how the walls are dancing. I want nothing more than to hear about it in excruciating explicit detail. Let me live through your warped glares, avant-garde approaches, southpaw jabs, and quirky sneers. The weirder, the better, or so I thought. Monster Mind serves as the perfect counterbalance to my visceral desires, a much-needed nerf to my chaotic brain's overtuned kit. The reason why rock needs paper, paper clamors for scissors, and scissors lusts for rock. Why sauce sommeliers of antiquity rightly realize that sweet needs sour and ham belongs on rye. If you have seen Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, then you know that Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn utters the most memorable line in cinematic history when engaging in a ludicrous underwater action set piece.
There's always a bigger fish.
Monster Mind is the purported bigger fish of having full-fledged lost in the sweet and sour sauce sicko brain. And to preempt some comments that are lurking down your iron barrel shaft and to obliquely actually introduce our topic, this segment does not intend on kink shaming. What a thing to say during my compendium-style Pokemon fan game video. Who amongst you even assumed that kink shaming would enter our galaxy's enormous all-encompassing orbit? But here we are, and here we go. Monster Mind is a great deductive puzzle game that requires ample brain power and patience. But here's the wrinkle. After clearing puzzles, your Pokemon companions begin stripping their clothes off with reckless abandon. I'm not a prude. At worst, I am only slightly prude adjacent, but this made me enormously uncomfortable to the point where my only sensible recourse, not only for me, but also to avoid YouTube mature content detection, was to enable the safe for work filters. This Grovyle was all caps yearning to remove their little shorts. And folks, I cannot show you what's underneath. Mr. YouTube would remotely detonate my near year's worth of video creation efforts all for this little lark. Hilariously, the gameplay difficulty shoots through the gosh darn stratosphere in quick measure. I genuinely have no idea what the 3-peg puzzles want from me, and I will not make a joke about the word peg or any of its related conjugations, you dirty dogs. I find it humorous that there is likely a real human person who is desperate to continue reading this ultra-sultry, sex-positive, pseudo-ironic, shockingly earnest, fascinatingly inclusive dialogue, and to view the Rule 34 pornographic Pokemon illustrations, but cannot progress because these color-based logic puzzles are far too crufty and difficult. If the itch.io comments are to be believed, which I should note, I think if there were real-life unreliable narrators lurking amongst us, they almost certainly are congregating underneath the not-safe-for-work heady puzzle-oriented Pokemon fan games. If they're to be believed, then there is some real narrative meat on these bones, alongside a decent runtime and increasingly scaling difficulty level. I, to be completely honest, tapped out far before these cocks came home to roost and cannot confirm nor deny, and I'm okay with that. If any of this appeals to you, well, you're welcome. I wish I could charge you for the referral. Let me know if you have any other oddball atypical Pokemon fan games that you love and enjoy. I had a blast making this video and playing these interesting games, so who knows, I may double back at a future date and make another one if people liked this one. Actually, I'll make it if I want to. Fuck what other people are saying. I have a little thing called free will, so, waka waka, go Knicks, see you in hell, and have a great day.